Wake up. And we are. And I got to tell you, the enemy is scared to death. But let me tell you about our guest tonight a little bit. Pastor John S Torell, born in Sweden in 1939, is an influential pastor, evangelist, and author. Graduating from an engineering college in Jönköping, Sweden in 1963 with a bachelor's in science and mechanical engineering. He later immigrated to the U.S. with his wife, Aina. They found faith in 65 and were led to a Southern Baptist church. Pastor Torell received his Master's of Divinity from Golden Gate Seminary in 73, and he founded European America Evangelistic Crusades, Inc., EAEC, in 1973. He has served as a pastor in various California churches. And his evangelistic missions include 8 crusades to Europe, focusing on Scandinavia. He authored the Christian Dynamics course series and The Rise of the Antichrist, plus an 8-book series exposing the Kabbalah. In 1986, he established Resurrection Life of Jesus Church, the RLIC, in Sacramento. Known for his involvement in deliverance ministry, Pastor Torell has a long history in radio broadcasting and currently hosts an internet radio program. He's been pivotal in spreading the gospel through EAEC, emphasizing the importance of confronting modern-day spiritual challenges. And brother and sister, have we ever got him? So without further ado, first time on Caravan to Midnight, Pastor John S. Torell. Welcome, Pastor. Thanks for making time to come on tonight.
Thank you very much.
I was reading the notes here, and I thought we'd just jump right into it. Who are the Jews, and are they the descendants of Jacob, as in Israel? And then maybe we can get into the transfer agreement, which most people have never heard of. So, who are the Jews?
Let me begin by simply looking upon first the religion of the Jews, because that has a tremendous great bearing. In Judaism, there are 2 messiahs. We have the biblical Messiah, which is a suffering Messiah, that's Jesus Christ. And then we have the Kabbalistic Messiah. And the Kabbalistic Messiah is a man anointed by God, and he is supposed to restore the kingdom of Israel. And Israel then is going to rule the world. Now, in the book of Revelation, there's a story of the Antichrist. But let me, very briefly, because if we don't understand the religion of the Kabbalah, then we don't understand what is happening. So here is what they taught, and this is King Solomon solidified this, and this is what the Kabbalah teaches. When God was busy with the creation, he got confused. And a portion of him fell into the bottomless abyss, and there it took the form of a holy serpent. Once he was in the abyss, he cannot get up by himself. And so the Kabbalists decided, this is a time of Solomon, which will be about 900 years before Christ, that there are 2 ways to get the serpent up out of the abyss. One is to make everyone good on this earth. The second one is to make everybody bad on this earth. So they were reasoning that it is hard to make everybody good, so we're going to go with what they call the low road and make everybody bad. And the teaching then of the Kabbalah is, the more you sin, the more you serve God. The worse you sin, the more you love God. So this teaching now was, by the time of Jesus, was solidified. Personally, now I have a master's degree of divinity, and I've been in church for a number of years before that. And I have never learned about what does the Jews really believe. We read things in the New Testament of the collision between Jesus, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, and we don't know why they did and what the purpose was. So the way I learned about the Kabbalah was that a pastor friend of mine from Sweden, I met him in 1983, and I told him, I had a book at that time in Swedish that talked about a little bit about the Kabbalah and the Antichrist. And so he read that, and he came to me the following day and said, if half of the truth in this book, he says, my entire world view has changed upside down. He said, give me 6 months. I will travel to Jerusalem. He went down there fairly often. And he said, I will investigate. I will prove you right or wrong. So about 6 months later, I was back in the U.S., and we talked on the phone. And he told me this: it is worse than what you have written in your book. He then told me that at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, there is a Kabbalah department. And people go there to get a degree in the Kabbalah. And the professor that was there for many years was Gershom Scholem. And so my pastor friend simply said, pick up 4 books that Gershom Scholem has written. They are in English. And he said, when you read that, you simply can't believe what you read. So I bought the books, and that is how I learned about the Kabbalistic system. Now, having that knowledge, I would like to share with you a couple of things here that in the Bible, we have the prophet Isaiah to begin with. So in the prophet Isaiah, and I'm going to read very briefly here from chapter 5. Woe unto them that draw iniquity with cords of vanity, and sin, as it were, with a cart whip, that say, let us make speed and hasten his work, that we may see it, and let the count of the Holy One of Israel draw nigh and come, that we may know it. Woe unto them that call evil good, and good evil, that put darkness in light for light, and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet, and sweet for bitter. Now, I have read that scripture many times. I've never understood it, but Isaiah here is addressing the Kabbalist and simply saying that what you cannot call evil good and good evil, and so he rebuked them. In chapter 28 of Isaiah, we now find the following, where Isaiah wrote this, chapter 28, and the verses 14 through 18. Wherefore, hear the word of the Lord, you scornful men, that rule this people which is in Jerusalem. Because you have said, we have made a covenant with death, and with hell we are in agreement. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, it shall not come unto us. We have made lies our refuge, and under falsehood have we hid ourselves. And your covenant with death shall be disannulled. Your agreement with hell shall not stand. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, you shall be trodden down by it. Every lodge we have are Freemasons, and also we have these fraternity organizations. Then we have the Order of Skull and Bones, which is a fruit of the Kabbalah. They take an oath of death, and they make life a refuge, and they have a covenant with death, and thinking that they will be able to stand. Then in Isaiah chapter 29, we read this in verse number 15. Woe unto them that seek deep to hide their counsel from the Lord, and their works in the dark. And they say, who sees us? And who knows us? That was the prophet Isaiah, who lived about 700 years before Christ. And so he addressed the Kabbalah, but if you don't know what the Kabbalah teaches, you don't understand what he's talking about, because you can't fathom that good is evil and evil is good. It is totally reversed. And a normal person cannot really accept this, because we are not evil like that. Now, the prophet Jeremiah, which operated around 500 before Christ, he also encountered a Kabbalist, and he didn't like them. And he said in Jeremiah 7, verses 3 through 11, he said this: This is the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel. Amend your ways and your doings, and I will cause you to dwell in his place. Trust you not in lying words, saying, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord are these. For if you thoroughly amend your ways and your doings, if you thoroughly execute judgment between a man and his neighbor, if you oppress not the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, and shed not innocent blood in this place, neither walk with other gods to your hurt, then will I cause you to dwell in this place, in a land that I gave you to fathers forever and ever. Behold, you trust in lying words that cannot profit. Will you steal, murder, and commit adultery, and swear falsely, and burn incense unto Baal, and walk after other gods, whom you knew not? So Jews are well known for, or not, you can't really trust them per se in business, because they have a tendency of not being truthful. Now, in the Talmud, which is a totally different set of writings, they have there a number of different things, and they simply said in the Talmud that if you do business with a Jew, you got to be honest. But if you do business with a Gentile, you are allowed, according to the laws, to lie, cheat, and steal from him. So this is where all this stuff is coming from. Let me now take you to Jeremiah chapter 11, and this is verses 9 and 10. And the Lord said unto me, a conspiracy is found among the men of Judah, and among the inhabitants of Jerusalem. They had turned back the iniquities of the forefathers, which refused to hear my words. They went after the gods to serve them. The house of Israel and the house of Judah have broken my covenant, which I made with their fathers. John the Baptist, he encountered the Kabbalists, and in Matthew chapter 3, he called them out, and for years, I didn't understand that, so I simply couldn't understand what he was talking about, snakes. But you remember now, the serpent, the holy serpent, they call him, is the Messiah among the Kabbalists. They worship the serpent. In Matthew 3:7, John the Baptist said this: But when he saw many of the Pharisees and Sadducees come to his baptism, he said unto them, O generation of vipers, who has warned you to flee from the wrath to come? He called them snakes. And the reason he called them snakes is they were Kabbalists. If we then turn to Matthew chapter 12, we find Jesus himself confronting these people. And this is in Matthew 12:34, where Jesus said, O generation of vipers, how can you, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. It was the risen Jesus that gave us information in the book of Revelation that most people really don't like to talk about. And I'm going to read to you from Revelation chapter 2. And we're going to look at verses, starting 2, verse number 9. I know your works and tribulation and poverty, but you are rich, and I know the blasphemy of them who say they are Jews and are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. I never understood that passage until after I had read about the Kabbalah, and I learned that. I could have figured out why he called them a synagogue of Satan. In chapter 3, to the next church, in Sardis, he said this, Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews, and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before your feet, and to know that I have loved you. Again, the synagogue of Satan. As I wrap this introduction down here, I'm going to take you now to Revelation chapter 13, which is a well-known chapter. And this is about the Antichrist. And we read in chapter 13 from verse number 16, And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in the right hand or in the foreheads. And that no man might buy or sell, say he that had a mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that has understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. The people that lived and accepted Christ, Jews, and particularly Jews, but not necessarily Gentiles, when they read Revelation 13 and 18, they said, oh, we know who that is. That is King Solomon. And so let me now show you from the Bible that King Solomon's number is 666. And we're going to turn to 1 Kings chapter 10. Now the weight of the gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold. Now he was worshipped, and he wanted gold. He wanted 666 talents, not more, not less. This was his number. In the same chapter, we find now that he had a throne, very special throne. And I read now from verse number 18. Moreover, the king made a great throne of ivory, overlaid with the best gold. The throne had 6 steps. The top of the throne was round high. There were stays on either side of the place of the seat, and 2 lions stood beside the stays. And 12 lions stood there on one side or the other upon the 6 steps. There was not the like made in any kingdom. This throne, now, if I can paint the picture for you, had 6 steps leading up to the throne. On one side were 6 steps. A lion was standing on each step. On the other side was another 6 steps with a lion. And anyone standing in front of the throne, they could see 666. In 1666, Sabbatai Sevi, a Jewish rabbi from Jerusalem, proclaimed himself to be the Messiah.
Pastor John, we got to do this top of the hour break here. So we'll do that, and you pick us up right here at this point, okay? And we can go forward from there. It is interesting. I want to make sure to ask, is the Bible of Kabbalah the Jewish Talmud? We'll get to that one too. We'll get to all of it. At some point, you really can't turn away. You know what I mean? I'm sure you do. Welcome back to Hour 2 of Caravan to Midnight. I am John B. Wells, the host of the program. We're visiting with Pastor John S. Torell. Folks, seriously, this is very serious and in many ways dangerous stuff. Not just because you might not get invited to the picnic for either talking about this or find yourself being caught listening to this information tonight. It's not because of that. This power that they wield is real. It's absolutely real. And may I just say now, I pray that all the Christians and Christians yet to be, but they're coming, understand that you are covered in the blood of the Lamb. And the Kabbalists and the schemers and the sorcerers, they have no power. They have no power against you whatsoever because you are covered in the blood of Jesus. Now, some people say, oh boy, that's just a bunch of radical fundamentalism. Let me tell you something, pal and pal-ess. This is serious stuff here. You know, these various hot rods and kitchen appliances and electronic devices and things like that, those are just little toys. Those are just little toys. This materialistic surrounding that we dwell within, this is not eternity. This is not spiritual. These are just accoutrements of modern living. They have nothing to do with what's going on inside the soul of every human being. So please understand, this is real, not just life or death on this planet. This is about life or death once we leave this planet. As we carry on now with Pastor John. Pastor, can you pick up where you left off? Because you were just getting into something.
So the Jews have three writings. They have the Old Testament, which is called the Torah, the law, the writings, and the prophets. The Talmud came into existence around about 600, 500 BC, and it was a commentary on the Old Testament. So you had rabbis would write commentary on the different books in the Old Testament, and with time, in the Jewish synagogues, they rather read what the Talmud said than read the word itself. There's a group of Jews called Karaite Jews. Karaite Jews. They have probably no more than about 5,000 to 10,000 people, and they decided after the Jews had come back from Babylon that they would not accept the Talmud, and they are Jews that are simply adhering to the Old Testament, and they refuse the Kabbalah and the Talmud. The Kabbalah is a writing of about 500 books. A lot of that is sorcery. We have so Hollywood, for example, like the Kabbalah, it's witchcraft. But the core of the Kabbalah is to bring the serpent to the surface of the earth so that he can set up the kingdom of Israel. And Israel at that time is going to rule over all nations. I want to read a scripture here from the book of Acts, chapter 1. And this shows here that the Kabbalistic thinking had permeated the Jewish people, including the apostles, in the beginning. So we read here in verse number 4, and being assembled together with them, commanded them they should not depart from Jerusalem, but wait for the promise of the Father, which says he you heard of me. For John truly baptized with water, but you should be baptized with the Holy Ghost now and then. When they therefore were come together, they asked him, saying, Lord, will you at this time restore again the kingdom to Israel? And Jesus said to them, it is not for you to know the times or the season which the Father has put in his own power. So Jesus had a hard time with his disciples. It was not until after his death and resurrection and the baptism of the Holy Spirit that they realized that his kingdom was not here. It was a spiritual kingdom. And that's why Pilate asked him, are you a king? You have a kingdom. And he said, my kingdom is not of this world. It's a spiritual kingdom. So we had the first uprising, the first large Kabbalistic uprising took place approximately in about 300 years before Christ. And that was the Maccabees. And they were able to clean out, this was the Greeks, the Syrian Greeks that had ruled at that time. And they were able to kick them out for about maybe 25 years or so. They cleansed the temple. And this is where the Jews today do Hanukkah. So Hanukkah is a Kabbalistic holiday in this way, that this is where the Kabbalists were able to get back the temple, cleanse it, and start sacrificing again.
Boy. All right, hang tough just a minute. This will only take about a minute, maybe a minute and a half. All right, two, literally. And we'll carry on now with Pastor John S. Torell on this exciting episode of Caravan to Midnight. Midnight's coming. No way out of it. Stand by. Well, at the moment, I would have to say it would be all right if this is as good as it gets, because this is getting pretty good as we visit with Pastor John S. Torell. Pastor, I got a question that's just trying to burst out here, and that is this thing about the transfer agreement. What is the significance, and in fact, what is the transfer agreement of 1933? And just, I realize you've reached one point, so bring us up to where you can kind of slide into addressing this thing about the transfer.
The transfer agreement comes out of Zionism, and Zionism is a Kabbalistic movement. Not everybody in there are a Kabbalist. They don't know. They're what I call useful idiots. They don't know. They know they want to establish Israel, and this book was written here after it was about 1985. We got this book out. So it goes back to Theodor Herzl. Theodor Herzl was an Hungarian Jew, Kabbalistic Jew. And he was commissioned by the world government to start the Zionist movement. He was a journalist, and he worked in Paris for his newspaper in Vienna. So he organized and simply said, we need to go back to the land of Palestine and take our land back. So he wrote a book called Der Judenstaat, which in English is The Jewish State. He wrote that about 1890. And he laid out a plan there that to have Jews to move back to Israel. And at that time, there was very little interest for that. And we had some Russian Jews, and this brings in the Khazars, but that's a different story, so I'm not talking about that now. So basically, Polish Jews and Russian Jews, they were poor. They were the one that started going back to Israel in 1890 and on, but it was a small group of people going down.
Which would have been Palestine.
Yes. And that was, at that time, governed by the Ottoman Empire.
Okay.
So in the Judenstaat, he wrote this: if we have to sacrifice whole branches of Jews, so be it, as long as we can establish a new Israel in Palestine. The American Jews, they didn't like it. They didn't like Zionism. The British Jews didn't like it either. But other Jews from different parts of the world, including Eastern European countries. So he had a first conference in 1897 in Basel, Switzerland. And that was the first Jewish World Congress. At that conference, they adopted what they called the Protocol of the Elders of Zion. They have been vilified and said they were a forgery, they never existed, and so on. The Protocol of the Elders of Zion was 24 parts, and they were translated into Russian, and from Russian were translated into English. And in 1905, a copy of the protocols exists in the British Museum in London. And I had an evangelist back in the 70s to go to London and check it out. And sure enough, the protocols are there, and you can look at them, but you can't take them out.
I'll bet.
So now we have the protocols. Looking back, as I have read the 24 points, everything that Herzl set out to do in 1897 has happened. It has taken place exactly the way he wrote it. Every point has been fulfilled. So I tell people this: either he was very lucky of writing a document 100 years ago that just happened to develop just like he did, or somebody followed it and made it happen. So now we come to World War I, and World War I, the Zionists now, and we have the Zionists, we got a world government. These are two different groups. But the world government decided that in order for Palestine, they had to get it away from the Ottomans. And that's the reason that Turkey was lured into World War I. And of course, Germany lost, and so Turkey lost. And then from 1921 and 22, England and France carved up the Ottoman Empire, and all the different nations from Egypt, Jordan, Palestine, Syria, and Lebanon, Iraq, Iran, and so on. They were created by these two French and British ambassadors that were working on that, and then they were ratified by the British and French government. The U.S. government never ratified it. Matter of fact, Wilson had to pull out of Europe because the people here said, "Get out of Europe. You don't want to be involved. You don't want to be involved." So now we had, after World War I, now the Zionists begin to work really hard. They created a group called BETAR, spelled B-E-T-A-R, and they had another guy by the name of Jabotinsky, and we had Golda Meir and a number of others. All of them were actually Khazar Jews. They were all from Eastern Europe. And they're the ones that started the process of getting into the state of Israel.
Did you say Khazarian?
Yeah, the kingdom was called the Khazarian kingdom. The people there are called Khazars, and it existed between about 720 to 1150. And these people in Khazaria they were not Russians, they were Turkmen, same race as the group of people that are in Turkey. And the emperor, about 720, he wanted to have a monotheistic religion, so he invited Muslims to come up and tell about their religion. And then he had Christians coming up, and then he had Jews come up. And then he made a decision that the Muslims and Christians came out of Judaism, so he was going to go with a root. So they became Jews, they moved in, he had a lot of rabbis come in, they built synagogues, and for the next 400 years, the Khazars became more Jewish than the Jews in the other part of the world. And of course, they were converted to Judaism about 700, and the first covenant did not exist. So they are false Jews. But they are the majority of the people that were part of the establishing Islam. So going back to the transfer agreement now. So it's a big fight. When Hitler began to take power in 1936, we had American Jews and British Jews. They organized a boycott. And this was a very strong boycott, and it was led by Stephen Weiss. And he was a well-known rabbi here in the United States. And it really picked up steam. So just like we have sanctioned Russia, Putin today, Germany was sanctioned. And it was really biting. The Zionist leadership in Germany sided with the Nazis. And so there was a war for about 8 or 9 years between the Zionists in Germany and the Jews in America and in England. And finally, the German Jews convinced the American British and said, if we can have the transfer agreement, we can transfer Jews from Germany down to Palestine, and by doing that, we can then build a nation, because they wanted skilled people. They wanted engineers, teachers, bankers, people that were educated. And what I got from Poland and Russia was labor. British Jews said, we're not going to go to Palestine. American Jews said, we're not going to go to Palestine. And the German Jews said, no, we're not going.
Right.
And so that's why the Zionist says, okay, because Fyodor wrote this in his book. He said, now, if you have an old prisoner in a prison and you open the door, he's so used to the prison he will not come out. So you got to kick him out. And that's exactly what he did with the transfer agreement, where they simply met with the Nazis, they made up plans, they had a bank, the Anglo-Palestine Bank. Germany took 25% of the Jews' finances. They could keep 75%. That was transferred to the Anglo-Palestine Bank in England, and then transferred down to a branch in Palestine. And then, of course, the Zionists took a cut. So the poor guy that would come from Germany got maybe 50% of his money. He was able to get out.
Oh, that's tough. So you made a note here that Adolf Hitler got backstabbed. What was the backstabbing?
Okay, repeat my question.
Well, you made mention of Hitler getting stabbed in the back over this deal. Zionist German Jews allowed the transfer of some Jews to Palestine. But, yeah, they backstabbed him by making a deal with the British to get America involved in the war in return for Palestine. Can you amplify that a little bit?
Well, there was a lot of different intrigues. During the wars, for example, you had Hitler and Stalin made a pact in 1938, an Eternal Friendship Pact, when Molotov and Ribbentrop, they signed an agreement where they had an alliance, and it infuriated the British and the French. And then, of course, there was a lot of double-crossing on all sides, so there was a lot of lies.
Understood. Okay. Well, maybe we can amplify that a little bit when we come back, because nobody wanted to go into World War I. They really didn't. America fought tooth and nail to keep from getting into World War I. Keep in mind that the Lusitania sinking was supposed to be the linchpin in all of this, right? Claimed it was carrying arms to Germany. But why would the New York Times, that has been reported repeatedly in numerous places, they would not run the ads that the German shipping companies wanted to place in the New York Times, warning people of certain routes and certain lines that they should not take because there was trouble brewing. We'll be back. You know the name of that song? Between a Rock and a Hard Place. As we visit here for the remainder of the hour with Pastor John S. Torell. Pastor, you're going to have to come back on the program at a really near point in future if you will allow the time, because each of the things that we want to discuss tonight are worth taking a few minutes with them. So there was a forced immigration of about 60,000 Jews to Palestine, the transfer of wealth through the purchase of German goods for export. But I wonder if we could roll these two things together here. How practitioners, let's call them the Kabbalistics, how have they used their Rothschild model to influence the U.S., and is that influence responsible for the shift from direct military action to, money games, economic and financial strategies in furtherance of global dominance?
Yes, after we had Sabbatai Sevar proclaim himself as a Messiah in 1666, 100 years later, we had another guy showed up. His name was Jacob Frank, and he was a Polish rabbi. And the world government at that particular time, which consists of a council of 13, there's only 12 people on it. The 13th is going to be their Messiah. They selected Ammer, who became Rothschild, and also had Adam Weishaupt. So they had three people. They had Jacob Frank, Adam Weishaupt, and they had Rothschild. And Rothschild was going to be in charge of the finances, and Jacob Frank was in part of making sure that the Kabbalistic system worked for the Jews. And then Adam Weishaupt, he became for the political. And so that's what we had the Illuminati started. And one of the first coup they did was the French Revolution that they pulled off. Then after they did that, the Rothschild then sent bankers, they sent people over here, and they were rebuffed by the founding fathers. They wanted a central bank. And the central fathers said, no, we don't want to go like in Europe. We don't want a central bank. And so eventually they did get the Federal Reserve Bank, which about 1913 came into being. So the influence have been, because the Kabbalistic Jew says to sin, he then serves God. So they branched out. So if you look upon the media, most of the media today is owned and operated, either owned by Jews or operated by Jews. Hollywood was a total business built by Jewish entrepreneurs from New York that built that up. And then we had the radio, television, still dominated by Jewish people. And so what they did with the movie industry, that was a golden calf for them, because they started out with nice movies, and then over the years, let's say in 100 years, the stuff we're getting out of Hollywood is garbage. And so they are simply leading us to sin. And the more we sin, the faster the serpent is going to come up. And then, of course, you have the porn industry in San Fernando Valley, which is another Jewish enterprise, where they make all the porn movies. So the media is controlled, banks are controlled, and it all goes back to the Rothschild and in 1700s, 1776, when Adam Weishaupt set this stuff up. So today, I'm labeled anti-Semitic, and I was labeled that a few years ago. I don't hate Jews. I love them just like I love everybody else. I want to see them saved. But it's enough. You say anti-Semitic, it's a brush, you get painted. No one asks, how is he anti-Semitic? It just sticks to you, and people simply we don't want to talk to that guy. So,
yeah, well, they think Israel is a piece of real estate instead of a people. And they don't understand that certainly 90% of the time when they're calling people like you and people like me anti-Semitic, which they don't, because they don't in my case, because I have explained to them I can't be anti-Semitic. I'm a Semite myself. The problem is you don't know who you are.
Yeah.
You with me on this, or am I over there in left field there?
No, I agree with you. So what I brought out tonight is simply this. It is a religion of Kabbalah that the more you sin, the more you serve God. And that's why we see the destruction. And also that you have, there's no morality. So a Jewish businessman, he can lie and cheat as long as he's dealing with a Gentile. If he deals with a Jew, he has to be honest. And I don't know if you remember this guy, Milken, in the 80s. He would buy up factories.
I do remember.
And then he would just sell them up. He would just destroy them. Everybody lost their jobs. And he went after factory after factory until he got caught up, and he was, I think he did 10 years. And then they bailed him out.
Burned him out.
The bottom line is, we have all this stuff because of a religion called the Kabbalah. We have all this stuff because of a religion called the Kabbalah, and we got a different Messiah. So God selected Abraham, Satan selected Abraham. In Judaism, we have two messianic lines. One of Jesus and one of the Antichrist. And that is where the clash is coming from. And that's eventually where it's going to get very violent down the road.
Now, how close are we to having this stealth takeover of America complete? I mean, what are the parallels between, because everything, it seems to be cyclical. World War I, okay, we got a little mileage out of that. Let's do World War II, get a little mileage out of that. And by that time, the corporation has expanded to various parts of the world, and the central banking system is consolidated and so forth. So I'm just wondering, where are we on this cycle that seems to be visible throughout the last at least 200 years?
What the Kabbalists want to do is they have this is the object they had to get rid of the mosque in Jerusalem on the temple ground. That has to go. The Kabbalists have been working since 1950 to prefabricate the new temple, and they want to do a copy of what Solomon did. His temple was prefabricated, and then he worked for 7 years to prefab it, and then when he was ready, they put it together. The Bible says there was not heard a hammer or a saw as he got together. And that's what they have done. So the temple is ready. Having forklifts and all type of tools that we have right now, I would say that the new temple can go up in about 1 week. But they got to clear the mosque. So what I see is I see a nuclear war because Satan does not mind if he only has 1/3 of the population to rule. He wants to rule the world. He wants to be the master. He doesn't care how many people get killed. And we had a lady back in 1969 from Norway that gave a prophecy. She's never given a prophecy. She was just a regular Christian. And they wrote it down. And she said that the World War III would start in a place that no one expected it to start. And it would smolder for a while, and then it would explode in a nuclear war, and that nuclear war would be over in about 7 hours. So my prediction is this is what I see. The U.S. will be toast. Russia will be toast. China will be mostly toast. Europe will be toast. And so what the Antichrist will have left is the Middle East and Africa, South America was left over in Asia.
That doesn't sound good, does it?
No, it doesn't sound good, and we got to remember this, that how they think. They sacrificed. There was not 6 million Jews that died in the Holocaust. There was not that many Jews in Germany. So the real number is about 3 million. But German Jews, Zionists, simply said, we sacrifice our own people to get their country. And that's how they do. They sacrifice. And they don't think about the individual. Another thing is this, and I just preach about this Sunday, the Jews in themselves today, in generality, do not believe in a life after death. And they simply are living for the here and now. And they say, well, if there is a life after death, then, we are Jews, so we don't have to worry about it. We are Jews. We will make it. God has a covenant with us. Ever heard about John Hagee?
Yes, I know the name.
John Hagee, the pastor, he went out a couple of years ago and simply told Christians, do not witness to Jews. God has a special program for them. Just help them with money and food and supplies and stuff like this, but do not give them Jesus because he got a separate covenant with them. So the Zionists are, and they are very, what you call it, militant. I mean, Christian Zionists, if you tell them, I don't believe that Israel was created by God in 48. They almost kill you. They're very militant.
Yeah. Well, now, if this is to be believed, there's a little breaking news here. At least 10 Jewish people have been arrested in connection with a bizarre secret underground tunnel brawl at Chabad headquarters in Crown Heights, New York. Mm-hmm. This was after Bochurim ripped wooden panels to prevent a cement truck from sealing off the recently discovered tunnels. Tunnels were allegedly dug around 6 months ago in an attempt to expand the iconic synagogue. This case is being investigated still. More details as they become available. This is pretty weird. There are pictures and everything.
Chabad is a Kabbalistic group of Jews.
Mm-hmm. There you go. X-ring, Pastor. Wow. I am sure this program to some people sounds highly prejudicial, racist, and every other negative comment they can throw at something they don't like hearing. But once you see it, once it's a matter of history, and not just one source, not just the one you go, okay, well, I kind of like the way this is written, I like this one. No, you don't. That's the one you go, okay, I'll set that aside. Let me find something that disagrees with me. Once you vet this, you can't turn away from it, Pastor. You just can't. And I'm thinking it is potentially the doom, the big permanent eternal doom for those that do turn away from it. Once they see it, they just, well, I've seen it and I believe it, but I just can't deal with it. I mean, I'm sure there's some people like that out there, and I just pray that they will be strengthened to withstand the truth, because it's not always, a little basket of flowers, maybe a little bubbly to go with it. No, the truth is like a punch in the face sometimes, but it's the truth. You got to deal with it, don't you? I'll stop now. Over to you.
So what I did was this. I started about 2013. I have written 8 Kabbalah books. They are steps. And the first book deals with Sabbatai Sevi, and he's explicated in 6066. And then I lead it up, and the last book is called Bitter Fruit. And in Bitter Fruit, I talk about the Order of Skull and Bones that was founded in 1832. And they decided that they were going to take over the American educational system. And so I have given the chronology order of that in a Bitter Fruit. And now the Jews, actually the Kabbalistic Jews, did not think. That reminds me of the story of the snake and a woman that Trump was talking about. They have nourished these people and got them so riled up, and then when the war in Israel started, they turned on them. So if somebody wants to simply know from A to Z what's going on in a pretty concise, not a whole book, for hundreds and hundreds of pages, that's when I recommend my books. The Kabbalah book series that they can get on my website. That's a starter. And once you have that, then you understand the politics, then you know how important it is to witness and to share with people and tell them, that this is what's going on behind the scenes, and try to pull some people out of the fire. That's my goal, what I've been doing.
And all your books are available at eaec.org, yes? Okay. All right, now this latest one, give us the title of your latest work.
The latest Kabbalah book I did is called Bitter Fruit. Okay,
that is the latest. All right, gotcha.
Yeah, and that deals with, I go up to all the Ivy Leagues. Another thing I didn't share tonight is this, there's too much to share, is this, that the Kabbalistic Jews are very smart. The Kabbalistic Jews are very smart. So they decided back in 1700 that we got to lead the Christians wrong. So they had this, he was a monk. He was in South America, and he was a Jesuit monk by the name of, I'm trying to think too much now. He will come back. Anyway, he had a vision of the rapture, and he wrote that down. And then they got kicked out from Chile. He was in Chile, come back to Spain, and we're now talking about 1820, 1830. And a copy of his book, or pamphlet, The Rapture, was given to the British pastor by the name of Irving, who had a charismatic church in London. And Irving started preaching it. He translated to English. And then we had John Darby, was a Plymouth Brethren and an evangelist. He picked it up. And when he came over to the United States, he started pushing it. And then he met Schofield. And he sold Schofield on it. And Schofield then infiltrated D.L. Moody Institute and at Dallas Theological Seminary that he founded. And it took 30 years to get the rapture into mainstream Christian churches before it was not existing. And the result was that the teaching was Jesus coming back anytime. Let the world, let the devil have the world. You stay in the churches and do your thing. So Christians got out of city councils, school boards, politics, and we gave it over to the devil. And that is how we lost the nation. And so it's a lie when I say, Jesus can come back anytime. The Bible says very specifically, Jesus will not come back until at the end of the Antichrist. And by the end, the time of the Antichrist is not 7 years, it is 41.6 years.
I wonder how many of them we've burned up so far.
What was that?
I wonder how many of those years we've burned up so far and how close we are to the advent of the Antichrist. Seriously.
They can pull the plug if there is a nuclear war. I would say that they would take power within months, because the slogan would be this: we can no longer have nations. Nations wage war. We need a federation, a world federation. That would take care of no more wars. And they would simply force nations to give up their sovereignty, and that's how the Antichrist would come in. Because it says in the book of Daniel, he would come in with a small amount of people with flattery. He's not going to come in with military power. Another point is this: the Bible also says he's a homosexual. And if you've been around probably long enough that you know that in 1950 it was a federal crime to be homosexual. They kicked them out. And today you can't say anything about homosexuals, but they kick you. That's the spirit of the Antichrist.
Sobering words, Pastor, no kidding. I want to tell everybody your website address again. It's easy. It's eaec.org. His latest book is Bitter Fruit. To get that Kabbalistic collection and read all about it so you'll know what you're dealing with. Pastor, thanks so much for coming on the program tonight. I really appreciate it. And let's do this again and explore these various elements more deeply, shall we?
Thank you very much. I'll be glad to do that.
Thanks. God bless her. Folks, it's weird, all these things happening as they happen with the time line stretched out there, and these little things just keep happening one after another. This may sound ridiculous to some, but of the thousands upon thousands, and literally thousands upon thousands of television shows available, online now with your service, there's one that stands out, and it's called Bodies. If you decide to watch this series, you won't have to get more than 3 or 4 episodes into it to see what's going on here. But you'll be dealing with 3 different periods of time, of history, at the same time. And I'll tell you, somebody out there was inspired by something to give us a heads up like this. Talk to you tomorrow night between now and then and beyond. God bless you, everyone. Good night.
This is Project Command. Stand by.